Welcome to the deep dive. It is Saturday, July 18th, 2026. And today we are tackling something so specific, but I guarantee it is going to resonate with you.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things where once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Right. So picture this. You've got great clients, right? You've got this thriving consulting business and a dog you absolutely love taking on long bushwalks. You genuinely enjoy the teaching, the deep learning, the actual work itself.
You're living the dream, basically.
Exactly. You're living the dream. So why is it that when you look at your diary and you see like three perfectly harmless meetings sitting there, you feel this overwhelming, really heavy sense of resentment?
Yeah, it's a completely jarring contradiction, isn't it? You sit there looking at the screen just thinking, I should be thrilled. My business is doing well. These are really good people. So why am I so grumpy about having to actually, speak with them?
Spot on. And usually that frustration is pretty quickly followed by a fairly heavy dose of guilt, I reckon.
Oh, heaps of guilt. Because, you start questioning your own character. You wonder, am I just being ungrateful? Or maybe I'm burning out.
But reading through the stack of sources you brought for us today, which are brilliant, by the way, we're looking at the cutting-edge neuroscience from flow researcher Rian Doris, alongside the foundational psychology of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and a completely different picture emerges here.
It really does. It flips the whole script on that guilt.
It does. The mission today is to pull this apart and show you that this resentment, it's not a character flaw. It is a highly specific neurobiological conflict happening right between your ears.
Yeah, your brain is essentially reacting to how these scattered, seemingly harmless meetings just completely disrupt your internal wiring for deep focus and autonomy.
Oh, okay.
You're basically experiencing this biological tug of war, right,
Yeah.
between the way your diary is built and the way your nervous system actually wants to operate.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because going from a feeling of resentment to like a biological glitch is quite the leap. In the materials from Rian Doris, he talks about this concept of the calendar choke point.
Yes, the choke point. It's such a great term.
It really is. I want to understand what is physically happening in the brain when you just drop a single midday meeting into an otherwise clear diary.
Well, to understand that friction, we have to look at a very specific region of the brain. It's called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, or the DLPFC.
The DLPFC.
Yeah. And among its heaps of executive functions, one of its primary jobs is prospective time monitoring. Essentially, it tracks the future.
Tracks the future. How do you mean?
So when you have a client meeting booked for, say, 2 p.m., your DLPFC locks onto it. It places a mental timestamp on that event, and then it has to use working memory to keep that intention alive.
Oh, right. So it's actively holding on to it.
Exactly. It's constantly cross-referencing your internal sense of time with environmental cues. It's running these background processes continuously so you don't miss the obligation.
Right. I get that it's holding the meaning in mind. But surely, as adults, we can just switch gears. Like, why can't I just sit down, do 2 hours of really deep, focused work, take the 30-minute client call at 2 p.m., and then just go right back to what I was doing?
Yeah, that sounds perfectly logical on paper, but it ignores the biological cost of what it takes to actually enter a state of deep focus.
Okay, walk me through that.
To get into that immersive state, whether you're, diving into a complex learning project or just fully losing yourself on that long walk with a dog, your brain needs to achieve a state called transient hypofrontality.
Transient hypofrontality. That sounds intense.
It's just a fancy way of saying temporary downregulation. Transient meaning temporary, and hypofrontality meaning a powering down of the prefrontal cortex.
Wait, so the very part of the brain that tracks time needs to be shut off for you to actually enjoy your work.
Spot on. This powering down is literally the mandatory price of admission to lose yourself in an activity. It's what shuts off the inner critic. It stops that constant tracking of time. It just allows you to be in the moment.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, because your DLPFC is actively awake, using metabolic energy to count down the hours and minutes to that 2 p.m. meeting, your brain can never fully let go.
Oh, wow. So it's essentially like having a heavy app running in the background of your phone, right? Just draining the battery and preventing the operating system from ever going to sleep.
That is the perfect analogy, mate. That background drain prevents the transition. You literally cannot achieve transient hypofrontality while the DLPFC is actively guarding a future commitment.
That is wild. So if the brain is doing all that heavy lifting in math just for one single meeting, what happens when you have, like, 3 or 4 scattered throughout the day. Doris refers to this as the Swiss cheese calendar, right?
Yes, the Swiss cheese calendar, where you might
Mhm.
have a 10 a.m. call, a 1 p.m. check-in, and then like a 3 p.m. review, just riddled with holes.
Sounds like a nightmare, honestly.
It is. A Swiss cheese diary is the absolute enemy of the flow state. To understand why it generates such intense resentment toward the work itself, we have to look at the neurobiology of the flow cycle.
Okay, I'm with you.
Entering a state of deep, effortless productivity. It isn't a switch you just flick on. It requires moving through an initial, mandatory stage called the struggle phase.
The struggle phase, right? This is that horrible feeling when you first sit down to, say, design a new consulting module and your brain just seems to completely rebel.
Exactly. You just stare at the blank page.
Yeah. You feel agitated and suddenly organizing your desktop folders or putting a load of washing on feels like the most urgent thing in the bloody world.
That is the struggle phase in action.
Mhm.
Neurobiologically, your brain is releasing stress hormones, cortisol, and norepinephrine. It is actively uncomfortable.
Is it supposed to feel bad?
Yeah, your nervous system is essentially ramping up the pressure, gathering the cognitive resources required to tackle a complex challenge. Now, to push through that genuinely uncomfortable friction, your brain requires a guarantee.
What kind of guarantee?
It needs to know that on the other side of this effort, there is a prolonged, uninterrupted reward,
Hmm.
which we call the flow payoff.
Ah, the flow payoff. That being that massive release of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins that makes the deep work feel incredibly rewarding and, effortless once you're finally in the zone.
Precisely. But here is where the subconscious math comes into play. Your brain is this hyper-efficient energy calculating machine. If you sit down to prep for a major client session, your brain looks ahead,
Right.
consults the DLPFC, and sees that you have a hard stop for a meeting in, say, 45 minutes.
I love the specific quote Doris uses in the sources for this. He says, building a sandcastle on the beach feels pointless if the tide can wipe it out at any moment.
It beautifully captures the mechanism, doesn't it? What's fascinating here is that your brain calculates the energy expenditure. It realizes, look, I am going to have to burn through all this cortisol and push through this painful struggle phase.
Only to be interrupted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It realizes I won't have enough uninterrupted time on the other side to actually bathe in the neurochemical reward before that 1 p.m. meeting interrupts us.
So the effort simply isn't worth the reward.
It's a terrible return on investment from a biological standpoint.
Mhm.
So your brain triggers a profound avoidance response. It says, yeah, nah, we're not doing this. Let's just check emails or do some shallow admin work instead.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
And that biological avoidance response manifests in your conscious mind as resistance, fatigue, and that creeping resentment you feel toward your clients.
You are resenting the diary because it is neurologically blocking you from your biological reward.
So what does this all mean? Because if this is purely a biological glitch with time tracking and energy conservation, why does it feel so deeply personal?
That's a great question. Because reading through your notes, this resistance feels like more than just being a bit distracted at work. It feels like a genuine imposition on your sense of self, and your freedom.
To answer that, we really have to look to the foundational work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's the guy who pioneered flow psychology. His research makes it incredibly clear that optimal human experience relies heavily on autonomy.
Autonomy, right. The feeling of being in the driver's seat of your own life.
Spot on. When your day is dictated by external appointments, other people's schedules, client demands, random check-ins, rather than your own freely chosen goals, it triggers a very specific psychological tax. Csikszentmihalyi calls this a drain on your psychic energy.
Psychic energy. Let's unpack that because it sounds a bit mystical at first, but he means something very concrete, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. Think of psychic energy simply as your finite pool of attention and cognitive bandwidth for the day. When you are doing something self-directed, like taking the dog for a walk or diving into a topic you are genuinely curious about, your psychic energy is allocated smoothly. It feels expansive. You are choosing where to direct your consciousness.
But when a calendar dictates that you have to perform a specific task at 2 p.m. sharp?
The autonomy is gone. When a schedule is imposed on you, the lack of control triggers a mild chronic stress response.
Yeah.
That stress requires emotional regulation.
Right, you have to sort of force yourself to do it.
Exactly. You force yourself to comply, which burns glucose and depletes the very cognitive resources you need for deep thought. Your psychic energy isn't just focused elsewhere. It is actively being burned up, managing the friction of compliance. It feels as though your life force is being forcibly subtracted from you.
I want to challenge that slightly, though, because we need to look at the reality of this specific situation. It's not like these meetings are a waste of time or inherently bad. For the person listening to this, these meetings lead to highly positive outcomes. It's income, it's seeing clients succeed, it's teaching and sharing knowledge, which they genuinely love. So how does the brain reconcile the fact that the outcome is so positive, but the event itself feels like a toxic drain?
The brain separates the outcome from the constraint. Logically, your conscious mind recognizes the positive outcome. You know the income is essential and the client's success is deeply fulfilling, but neurobiologically, the loss of control over your time overrides that logical benefit.
Wait, really? So the biological reaction to being controlled is louder than the logical appreciation of the money or the success?
Much louder. The fact that the meeting is an external constraint sitting right in the middle of your day fundamentally changes how your brain processes the activity. It turns what could be a joyful, collaborative teaching moment into a mandatory imposition. Your brain resents the constraint, not the client.
That is a massive distinction. You resent the constraint, not the client. Just hearing that is probably a huge relief for a lot of people.
I reckon it takes a lot of guilt away, for sure.
But it also means we need to talk about the practical fix. Because the reality is you can't just sack all your clients and go live in the woods. You have consulting business to run. So how do we actually resolve this neurobiological tug of war without tanking the business?
Well, according to the strategies laid out by Ray and Doris, the solution isn't to stop taking meetings. The solution is to radically restructure when they happen to clear those calendar choke points.
Okay, what's the first step?
The first structural change is what he calls bookending your meetings.
Bookending. So just pushing them all to the absolute edges of the day.
Yes, you eliminate the Swiss cheese diary by batching all your client calls, your Zoom meetings, and even your heavy email communication entirely outside of your peak productive hours.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if you're a morning person, you protect your morning at all costs. You knock out all your external obligations at the very beginning of the day, say from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., or you push them all to the very end of the day from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m.
So no more random 11:30 a.m. check-ins, no more 1:15 p.m. syncs. You just quarantine the interruptions.
You quarantine them aggressively. And by doing that, you open up the space for the second most crucial solution.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
It does. It's about carving out massive, uninterrupted flow blocks. A flow block is a dedicated period of 1 to 3 hours where you do not check email, you do not take calls, and you have zero external obligations pending.
But let's look at how this plays out in the real world, mate. What happens when a high-paying client insists on a 1 p.m. meeting? We can't always dictate the terms to the people paying the invoices. If they demand a midday slot, does the whole system just fall apart?
It requires boundaries, and yeah, it's sometimes a compromise.
Yeah.
But the goal is proportion. If a crucial client absolutely needs a 1 p.m. slot on a Tuesday, you take the meeting.
Fair enough.
But you don't let Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday turn into Swiss cheese as well. You might dedicate Tuesday as your meeting day and keep the rest of the week bookended. The neurobiological goal is to ensure that for the majority of your week, your DLPFC has the opportunity to look ahead, scan the horizon, and see absolutely nothing.
And when it sees nothing, when the horizon is completely clear for 3 hours, how does the brain react?
Because there is no impending alarm and no ticking clock, the DLPFC finally feels safe enough to power down. You achieve that transient hypofrontality.
Ah, we're back to that.
Yep. Your brain calculates that if you push through the initial struggle phase, the flow payoff is absolutely guaranteed. You have hours to immerse yourself in the reward. Because that reward is secured, the brain stops triggering the avoidance response. The friction just evaporates.
Wow. The tide is out and it's staying out so you can finally build the sandcastle. When you restructure your diary to guarantee those massive blocks of time, you are literally giving your nervous system permission to fully enjoy your life again. You can take that long walk with the dog and be completely present because you know your client calls aren't until 3 p.m.
Spot on.
You can dive deep into your learning because your psychic energy is yours to control. And when 3 p.m. rolls around, you can give your absolute best to your clients because you haven't spent the whole morning subconsciously resenting the fact that they were going to interrupt you.
It's a vital synergy.
Mm.
You reclaim your autonomy, which Csikszentmihalyi proved is essential for optimal experience,
Yeah.
and you align with your neurobiology, which Doris shows is vital for deep, meaningful work.
So we fix the schedule, the DLPFC powers down, we get our flow back, and the resentment fades. But is that the end of the story? Because reading through the deeper philosophical sections of Csikszentmihalyi's work in your sources, it seems like flow is doing a lot more than just making us feel productive and relaxed.
It is doing much more. And this is a really profound concept to end on. Csikszentmihalyi noted in his research that flow states aren't just a tool for productivity or like a temporary escape. They are actually the primary mechanism that increases the complexity of the self.
The complexity of the self. How exactly does a flow state make a person more complex?
It happens through two simultaneous processes, differentiation and integration. Let's break down how they actually work.
Okay, let's hear it.
When you are in a flow state, you are usually pushing your skills to the limit. Think about when you are mastering a difficult new concept in your self-directed learning, or when you're navigating a really complex breakthrough with a consulting client. You have to stretch your capabilities.
Right.
By doing that, you are differentiating yourself. You are literally growing new neural pathways, developing unique skills, and becoming a more capable, highly individualized person.
So differentiation is about standing out, becoming sharper, and more uniquely yourself through the challenge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if that was all that happened, you would just become isolated. This is where integration comes in. Because flow requires such deep, immersive focus. It connects you profoundly to the task at hand.
How so?
Well, when you are deeply engaged in teaching a client or completely present while walking your dog in nature, your sense of a separate self temporarily dissolves. You integrate with the person you are helping or the environment you are in. You feel a sense of belonging to a larger system.
Oh, wow. So you differentiate by sharpening your unique skills, and you integrate by connecting those skills deeply to the world around you.
And when those two processes combine, you emerge from the flow state as a more complex, highly evolved version of yourself. Your consciousness literally expands.
That is massive. So fixing this diary issue, clearing those choke points, it isn't just a time management hack to make your workday a bit smoother.
Not at all. It is the prerequisite for your own psychological evolution. If you allow your diary to remain fragmented, you are continually blocked from the flow state, which means you stall your own growth.
Hmm.
You remain static. But if you protect those flow blocks, you unlock the mechanism for ongoing, lifelong expansion.
Amazing. So next time you look at that diary and start feeling that creeping resentment, remember what is actually at stake. You aren't just shifting little colored boxes around a screen to be more efficient. You are taking back the steering wheel. You are closing down that heavy background app, letting your nervous system finally rest, and making sure that when you build your sandcastles, the tide stays exactly where it belongs.
Absolutely brilliant way to look at it.
Well, thank you for bringing these incredibly rich sources to the table. It has been absolute privilege unpacking this neurobiological puzzle with you. Until next time, protect your flow, enjoy those dog walks, and we'll catch you later.